Welcome to the Lifeitarian. 360 degrees of life. In this space, Monique shares her personal journey. You will be inspired, encouraged, and empowered as you live your everyday life. Here's your host, Monique Monkey.
Hey, Lifeitarians. On today's episode, I am sharing with you losing Ty. Before I can share with you what it was like losing her, I have to share with you how she came into my life. It was the summer of 1981, and as I recall, Gloria Vanderbilt and Jordache jeans, jelly shoes, dolphin earrings, and feathered hairstyles were all the rage. This was during the beginning of the hip-hop culture era. Radio airways were filled with the sounds of Curtis Blow, the Sugar Hill Gang, DJ Jazzy Jeff, and the Fresh Prince, Salt and Pepper, Eazy-E, Slick Rick, Grandmaster Flash, and the Furious Five, just to name a few. I was an average teenager growing up in the inner city of Southwest Philadelphia. I was in junior high school and enjoyed doing the things that teenagers did. I hung out with friends, listened to music, attended block parties and house parties, went to roller skating rinks, movies, and the mall. I was raised by two law enforcement officers. Both my mom and dad were police officers. They raised me to be respectable, responsible, and independent. I was taught how to cook, clean, pay bills, and look after my siblings, even though most of them were older than me. I, like most teens in my neighborhood, found ways to earn money so I could do all the things that I liked. I did several things like cleaning knickknacks, running errands to the grocery store and dry cleaners for some of the older ladies in our neighborhood. And I was a well-trusted and well-respected babysitter in our community. We were a couple of weeks away from the end of the school year in June of 1981. I was not allowed to babysit on school nights, only weekends. Those were my parents' rules. I was quite surprised when my mom told me that one of my regular clients had called and requested my babysitting service on a Thursday evening. She said it was an emergency and she really needed me to come, even though she knew I was not allowed to babysit on school nights. She had apparently made her case with my mom, who had agreed to allow me to babysit that night. As I stated earlier, it was near the end of the school year. I was a good student with good grades, and my mother was not very concerned about me being up a little later on this one night. I had no idea how this specific night in the summer of 1981 was going to alter my entire life. The couple that I babysat for were young, in their late 20s, I would think. They had two children that I babysat, two girls, aged 2 years old and 10 months old. To make a long story short, the husband and father of this family raped me that night. I remember running home hoping that my mother would be in her bedroom lying down, and she was. She called out to me to confirm that I had made it home and that I was getting ready for bed. I remember going into our bathroom and running a tub of water to take a bath. I remember trying to cleanse my body, draining the tub and refilling it with clean water to cleanse my body again, and I repeated this ritual until there was no more hot water. I remember trying to stifle my crying so that no one would hear me. When I finally emerged from the bathroom, I gathered all of the clothes that I had wore that night, took them to the trash, and made sure I buried them deep so no one would see them. I went in my bedroom and stared into the darkness. I couldn't stop crying as the images of this violent attack flashed through my mind like a horror movie. I can clearly remember how ashamed I felt, how dirty I felt, how very embarrassed I felt. It was nearly impossible for me to go to sleep. I arose the next morning and hurried to leave for school before the rest of my family started stirring about their morning routines. I couldn't let anyone see how red and swollen my face was. I managed to conceal this from my family until my face returned to its normal appearance. A few weeks after school let out for the summer break, I ran away from home. There was an all-out effort to find me. During the time that I was gone, my perpetrator stupidly asked my mother if it was possible that I had run away from home because I was possibly pregnant. My mother later told me that she wondered why he would ask such a strange question. The very next day, my youngest brother found my journal in which I had recorded the details of that night. During a phone call home to ensure my family that I was safe, my parents encouraged me to come home so that we could talk about and then work out whatever the issues were that caused me to leave home in the first place. They did not tell me on the phone that they knew about the rape. I returned home to the support of my parents, my brothers, and the rest of our community. We would not learn for 5 months that I was pregnant by the man who raped me. My parents took me to the hospital, and after my examination, we were told that I only had 48 hours to make a decision as to whether I would terminate the pregnancy or live with it. I was devastated, and I felt very alone when my parents told me that they could not make the decision for me. My mother said, "You have to make this decision for yourself." My parents assured me that if I chose to terminate the pregnancy, they would love and support me and make sure I got through it okay. They also told me that if I chose to go forward with the pregnancy, that they would love and support both me and the baby and make sure that we had everything that we needed. It was a hard decision for me to make at 14 years old. Somehow I strongly felt and believed that God would not want me to kill a baby, no matter how the baby was conceived. On April 15, 1982, my daughter Ty was born. I was awakened in the recovery room by my mother and several doctors. I was told at that time that due to the trauma of my labor and delivery, my daughter suffered severe brain damage. I was told that she had cerebral palsy and would most likely be in a vegetative state for most of her life, and that I should consider placing her in an institution instead of taking her home. Due to the complications I suffered during my labor and delivery, I had developed a fever and infection, so I did not even meet her until she was 3.5 weeks old. Needless to say, when she was ready to be discharged from the hospital at 5.5 weeks old, I brought my daughter home. The next 11 years and 7 months would prove to be remarkable. I had hoped that I would teach my daughter everything that I knew. To my surprise, and although she never spoke a word, she taught me instead. She taught me how to anticipate the needs of others. She taught me commitment. She taught me drive and determination. And most importantly, she taught me unconditional love. Ty attended school and church. She was a brownie in the Girl Scouts. She was a princess mascot for a local drill team. And she was a 2-time silver medalist for the Special Olympics representing the Easter Seal Society. She had an infectious smile that everyone loved to see. She loved clothes and nail polish and dolls and music. We were always out and about doing the many things that brought her joy. I was everything to Ty, and Ty was everything to me. During her life, I got married and gave birth to her brother Devin. She was not initially very happy when I brought this baby home from the hospital, but I could tell that she eventually learned to love her little brother. As he got older and learned to maneuver around, he would always try to sneak and give his sister things that she wasn't allowed to have, like candy that she could choke on or toys that she couldn't always hold in her hand. Ty had a seizure disorder. She had been hospitalized many times with aspiration pneumonia with a very high temperature. It seemed like every time she went in the hospital and came home, her quality of life diminished a little bit more. She ended up with a feeding tube, and at one point she ended up on oxygen 24 hours a day. Ty always enjoyed visits to her grandparents' home. After one of her many hospitalizations, her grandmother promised her that if she would just get better, she would be allowed to come to her grandparents' home to live forever. And just like magic, she was all better the next day. My parents and I agreed that Ty would stay at their house until we all felt she was well enough to come home. Ty lived with my parents for approximately 2 months. I visited her every day after work. It was very clear that she was getting weaker. She actually coded a couple of times. After the second time, I decided that if it happened again, it would not be fair for us to pull her back. We should let her go and let her rest. So I told my parents how I felt, and I expressed to them that she should be listed as DNR, do not resuscitate. Of course, my parents did not agree with my decision, and they said they would hear no such thing. January 25th, 1994 was a beautiful and sunny day. I received a phone call from a young lady who stayed at my mom's home, informing me that my daughter had stopped breathing and that I should come to my parents' house immediately. I only lived approximately 4.5 miles from my mother's home, but it seemed like it took forever for me to get there. When I arrived, I ran up the stairs to the front of the house, and I was greeted by my mother, who grabbed me and told me that the paramedics had been working on her, but she was not responding to the CPR. I asked my mother to tell them to stop the CPR, but she refused. The paramedics continued working feverishly, trying to resuscitate my daughter. As they loaded her very small body into the back of the ambulance that was parked in front of my parents' home, I broke down crying, and from somewhere in the pit of my soul came a sound of pure grief and heartache. I promise you, I heard my heart break. When I arrived at the hospital, the staff escorted me to a family conference room where I was greeted by the hospital clergy, who sat and prayed with me as I waited to receive some news from the doctors who are working on my daughter. It was not long before the doctors came out to the conference room to inform me that they had pronounced my daughter dead. They escorted me to the room where she was. I asked the nurse who was with me if she could bring me some soap and water, towels and washcloths, baby lotion, powder, and a hairbrush. She asked me why I needed those things, and I told her I wanted to bathe my baby one last time before they took her away from me. They allowed me to do that, and then they brought me a rocking chair so I could hold Ty on my lap and rock her for the last time. When my parents arrived to the hospital, I couldn't speak. Words escaped me. I left. I went back home to my house, and I began to break everything in sight. I was so enraged. And when I was finished, I cursed God out. I could not believe that this God who allowed a 14-year-old child to be raped and then allowed the same 14-year-old child to give birth to a child who was severely brain damaged and disabled, even after this child tried to please this God by keeping and loving this baby, would then take this little girl away from me. Funeralizing and burying my daughter was the hardest thing I have ever had to do in my life. I thought I was going to lose my mind. I thought I was going to end up in an insane asylum. This thing cut so deep and hurt so badly that I could not bear to look at her photographs, so I took them all down and put them away. I closed her bedroom door and locked it. It stayed locked for about 3 or 4 months. I felt like I wanted to die. I did not understand what had happened, why it had happened. I couldn't figure out how to continue living. I felt like I could not trust my heart. I was afraid to love Devin because I felt like if I continued to love him, he too would die. The pain of losing Ty has never left me. It has gotten easier to live with the pain as time has passed by. It has been 26 years since I lost her, and sometimes it feels like it was only yesterday. I encourage you to hold your kids a little closer, hug your kids a little tighter, and remember to tell them you love them every single day. Until next time, Lifetarians, I offer you life, love, and light.